Hello, hello. All right, I wanted to make you guys and girls up north feel, like I'm cold down here, so I got my hoodie on. I'm actually having a bad hair day, so I'm dressing kind of warm. It's a little chilly today here in old Florida. I'm just kidding. It wasn't that chilly. All right, stand by 1 second here. Let me get some things cleared up. How are y'all doing tonight? Tonight's class, what I wanted to do with you is tonight's class, I wanted to take advantage or show a way to take advantage of some of the tools in version 10. Now, I know some of you don't have version 10 of your Vectric software, whether it be VCarve Desktop Pro or Aspire, but we're going to make a clock using the existing models that come with our software that we have in here. We're going to build a clock, basically, whether it be a wall clock or a desk clock or something. We're going to build a clock using models that are already in our software at our disposal, but we're going to take advantage of the mirroring function, which you would have if you have like 9.5, I believe version 9.5 came out with the mirroring function. And then version 10 came out with a function within the modeling component tree of what's called clipping, where we can create a perimeter and we can clip things outside of that perimeter away of the models. We can actually kind of gives us almost a little bit of power to manipulate and create models that we don't have and everything. So you're going to see that. And bear with me, even though you may not have version 10 yet, or you haven't upgraded to version 10 or anything and all. Watch, don't leave. Watch the class. It's not going to be a very long one, but hang with me tonight, because some of the things you might have the mirroring function and all that might be useful to you in the future, and then some other of the node editing and things that we're doing, and also. Just because I am going to be using some of the version 10 functions that are available to us in version 10, doesn't mean that this video necessarily doesn't apply to you. It just means at this point, day and time, until you decide to kind of move up to 10, you don't have that particular function, but everything else you can do. And it might just give you a little bit of some ideas and concepts and all, especially when it comes to the mirroring and all, working with components. Just hang with me, and if you feel like, hey, thank you for stopping by, all that good stuff and everything, but let's get into it and let's take a look at what our end goal is going to be. And let me pull over a couple of things on the screen here. All right, so let's get over into the software for a second. And I'm going to stay over here on the left just for a minute just to talk to you. Now, I am a fan of ClockKit. Usually if I'm doing a clock project or something, this is where I will get my inserts or my little mechanisms and things like that. And for this particular project, I'm looking at this 4 1/16 inch gold skeleton clock insert with a gold bezel. And if I zoom in here, the outside diameter is 4 1/16 of an inch. Okay. And the inside diameter here is going to be 3 1/4. That's the size of the pocket or the hole that's going to need to be carved for this insert to fit in. So that's what I'm kind of for this clock. That's what I'm basing this around in this particular insert. But there's lots of different options. You have all kinds of movements, inserts, kits, hands, dials, all that wonderful stuff, and everything. But this particular one is the one that I picked out. It's called the 4 1/16 inch gold skeleton insert with gold bezel. And I kind of liked it because of the moving mechanisms inside the gears and stuff and everything. I liked it for that function there. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's what I'm kind of going with. That's what I'm basing this project off of. And once again, that's ClockKit, KLOCKIT.com. And it's a great place to get different inserts and things like that. All right. And they're not a sponsor. I don't have any affiliation with them at all. That's where I get my kits, and that's what I'm recommending. Okay. All that being said, let's go ahead and get rid of this. And let's come over here and look at this. So what I'm looking at is this is not nowhere near a finished product yet, but what I'm looking at is I'd like to either have a wall clock or a mantle clock. If it's a mantle clock, then I got to put a base on it or what have you. But that I can carve. We're going to do a carving of like a family name or something. So I'm going to take advantage of the ribbons and stuff and all and everything. And these are just some of the components that are already part of the modeling and stuff. So this is kind of where we're going to end up. It's not the completed project or anything by any means. This is just kind of a start of an assembly of some models to create something. And we may not even go this route. I'm definitely going to use this main base here and this Flourish down here, but we can look at other options and all. But this is kind of where I'm heading. Now, let's get out of this 3D view, and let's turn on or create a new layer, and I'm going to call this my class layer. And let's turn off the original layer, all those vectors, and let's turn off all these models and layers and everything here. Start with a blank slate. All right, let's get centered up on the screen. We can get rid of that guideline there. Let's talk about our setup. Now, if we go back to ClockKits for a minute, and we scroll down here, and let's zoom into this here, this kind of drawing. The overall diameter A, is going to be 4 1/16. Diameter B, the inner diameter, is going to be 3 1/4, and then the depth is going to be 1 31/64, which is just a tad bit under 1.5 inches. Okay, 1.5 inches. And so my material, knowing that, my material is going to be set up here in this job. It's going to be set up for 1.5 inch thick material. I'm going to basically, I don't have any 1.5 inch stock laying around. I may end up gluing, laminating basically 2 3/4 inch boards together to get my thickness, or I might go out and find a nice thick piece of wood. But right now our thickness is going to be 1.5 inch thick. They do have smaller inserts, shallower, depths and things. Or if this was a mantle clock, you could use a thinner piece of wood, in the back of the mechanism where you put the batteries and all that stuff in would just be sticking out of the back a little bit, all that good stuff and things. But this project for my blank piece of wood, it's going to be a single-sided job. It's going to be 21 inches along the x-axis, 21 inches in width, and 12 inches tall, and about 1.5 inches thick. Now, if it's going to be a wall clock, I'm going to end up doing a profile cut, cutting out the profile and all that stuff. Overall, I don't think it's going to end up being 12 inches tall, but, that's where I'm going with this piece. Now, for me and my job setup, I work off for the Z0 position. For me, I work off the machine bed. I zero out my Z on the wasteboard. Okay. Because my wasteboard is also a jig that, holds my material, and it's got a 90-degree fence on it and all that good stuff. You hear me say that every time. But you can absolutely work off the material surface. I like working off the machine bed when I'm working with 3D models because it gives me a known flat surface to touch off to after all that material is milled away. For my other tools, I got to touch off on the surface that's uncut, and just having it set for the machine bed makes it easier for me. Now, because my CNC does have a fence on it, if you will. Does have a fence on it, 90 degrees. I always reference off the bottom left corner, but you can start from the center corner, wherever you want to start from. Now, I'm going to work in, because I'm working with models, I want to make sure that I'm in a very high resolution. Now, if I was in Aspire or my Aspire and I was building a model from scratch or something, I'm working in a much higher resolution than the very high, which is 4 million pixels. I'm usually in the 16 million pixels, 8 to 16 million pixels, somewhere around there, which is the extremely high or the maximum resolution. But when you're in the standard job setup, you only have 3 options, and so we're going to be in the very high. So with that being said, we'll click OK, and I'm going to pop a 7 up here and have a sip of it, and then we're going to get going. Oh, refreshing. All right. As I said, we're going to take advantage of the models that are available to us without having to go buy special models or anything like that. We're gonna use the models that are available to us, and I'm going to be using most of them from the decorative category folder, decorative folder. And in the modeling tab, we're going to be working with levels. In our component tree, we're going to be working with different levels. All right. Now, I've already got level 1, 2, 3, and 4 here, and I've got them turned off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize those levels out of the way, and I'm going to insert a new level. And this new level here, I'm going to move it down to the bottom, and I'm going to call this my rename the level, and I'm just going to call this my class level 1. We're going to pretend that I have no levels up above. We're going to just do that. All right, class level 1. Okay, so that's where I'm going to work in. Right now, it's just a basic plain level. The combine mode is set to add as what it is for default. And there's no mirroring, clipping. None of that stuff is turned on. It's just a basic level. As a default, you get a level 1. It already creates that when you start a project and all. And by right-clicking, you can add more levels, rename them, whatever you want to do. All right, let's get my full screen going on here. And let's get going. And Fred Grover, before we get going, he asks a very important question. Hey, at Spindle TV. By the way, Fred, you can call me Laney. Is that clipping only in version 10? Yes, the clipping feature came out in version 10. The mirroring function of the component tree came out in version 9.5, if I'm not mistaken. But the clipping feature that you're going to see some of came out in version 10. Okay. All right. So let's start off by, first of all, let's get a base model going on here. And before I get the base model, remember now, my clock insert is 4 1/16, right? 4.0625. We'll throw that in there. And I also had a 3 1/4. 3 1/4 was the inside dimension. So that's going to kind of represent my clock there. And that's going to help me size up my model so that, that insert is going to fit into the pocket that we cut. So I got those in there. Let's go over to our clip art here, and I'm going to go into the decorative category, and let's see if I can minimize my view a little bit. Let's go with kind of medium-sized icons here. And let's scroll down. And the first one that I'm going to get a hold of is this Flourish number 126. And I'm going to drop that onto the board. And you can see that it's very small right now. And let's go ahead and I'm going to hold down my shift key and let's get that sized up. Ooh, not that big. Slow her down there, boss. All right, let's go about right there. And let's get that model centered up. I'm going to just use my alignment tool over here, and let's get it centered up on the material and everything. Now, if I try to center these rings over the model, they're not going to land in the right spot, where they need to be and everything. So I got to kind of move them manually. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a guideline from the left side here, and I'm going to snap to the center of my model and put this guideline here. You might have saw that when we first started and everything, and I turned it off. And I'm going to zoom in here. And basically on these two, I'm going to bring them down, and I'm going to overlap my outside bezel. I want it to overlap this flat area. If we look at this model real quick, oop, not that model. Why is that one turned on? Hold on, I got something turned on here that shouldn't be on. There we go. Okie dokie. If we look at that model, if we look closely at it, let me zoom in. This center area here, part of that center area is going to get cut out for the clock to fit into, but right along this outer ring here, the bezel is going to sit on, and it's pretty much flat. There's a little bit of a concave here, but it's pretty much flat right here that my bezel is going to push right in, or my clock's going to push right in and just kind of sit nice and flush up against that model. It's kind of why I chose this. Now on this model, I don't want the crown. This is where the clipping is going to come in. You're going to see that in a moment. But knowing that, that outer perimeter, I'm going to do my best to get it centered up. And I'm running a little low here, and it's, it's thinner up here than everything. So I'm going to hold down my control key so I can micro move these two circles and everything. And I'm going to hold down my control key and use just my up arrow key. And first of all, I don't want the model selected when I do that. Turn the model off, just those two things. I'm going to use my control key and my up arrow, and that's going to allow me to micro move these two objects right here. So let's kind of bump that up just a little bit. And what I'm looking for is the reveal. The reveal is the distance between the outer ring and this lip, this kind of shaded lip that you see here. That reveal, I want the same reveal all the way around. Now, I'm a little heavy on this side over here. So once again, if I hold my control key down and my left arrow key, I'm just going to kind of bump that over just a bit. And even though it's taken my circles off the center line here, I've got to do my best to center it up. And if I put that circle, dead center on that line and everything, I'm not quite there. A little bit. It might be just an optical delusion on my part. And one way I can really tell is if I click on the model and it gets darkened up for me and everything, I can kind of see that lip a little bit more defined. And actually, that doesn't look too bad. Maybe it can get bumped up a little bit more. So let's select both of those. Hold down that control key, and I'm going to just bump it up just a little bit more. Right about there. All right, let's click on that model, get that dark ring. Yeah, doesn't look bad. Okay, all right. Now, with that, that kind of gives me my part, or the main base part of my part, if you will. And I'm going to keep this guideline here because I'm going to be using it in a minute. But now I'm ready to start adding some of the other components and everything. And so what I want to do is on my level here, I'm going to insert a new level, and I'm going to rename that level class level 2. And I want that level active because when I bring in this next model, I want it to be on that level. Okay. So let's go into our clip art, and let's come down and find another model. All right, Flourish. It's not going to show me the number. Flourish 22 something. All right, let's drop that in there. Okay, now I'm going to zoom in down here, and this Flourish, for some reason, knowing that my clock base is centered on my board, if I took this Flourish right now and centered it left and right on my material, it's not quite center. You see how everything's over here and here? It's not quite center. So I'm going to use the center of this Flourish as my reference, and I'm going to, get it. Stand by. Let me zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to eyeball it and get it pretty darn close to center on that line at all. And notice how we have the lip over here is somewhat, not touching. This one is a little overlapping. This model is not symmetrical, right? And it kills me, but that's where mirroring comes in. We'll be able to fix that with mirroring and all. But what I do want to do is I want to make this thing bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my whole model right now and my vectors, and I'm going to move it up on my board a bit. Oop, not that much. Right about there. And then let's go and split our view here, our 3D view, so you can see what's happening. Zoom. All right, and notice that little bitty Flourish is tiny. It's a little guy compared to our big backdrop, or our base, if you will. So we're going to size that up right now, and let's close the alignment tool. We don't need that open anymore. All right, so I'm going to size that up. I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and I'm going to grab one of my corner brackets and size that up. Ooh, not that big. I'm going to size that up to where the flourishes over here, and let's zoom in there. These flourishes, I want them to kind of fall into the middle of this area right in here. And so let's size it down a little bit. Hold that Shift key down and keep it centered. All right. Now, once again, I'm going to grab the model and I'm going to center it, but this time I'm going to overlap the bottom of this base here. And I'm not quite centered. And again, that's where the control key comes in handy. I'm going to hold down the control key and hit my left arrow key and just bump it until I'm satisfied with that center line. And I'm satisfied there. All right, now let's go into 3D model view here for a minute, and let's look at what's happening. Because both, oh, don't do that. Hold on. This is where Control Z becomes your best friend. Control Z, unpromptu movement. Because both models and both levels are set to an add mode, they're basically the one Flourish is taking on the shape of whatever's underneath it. It's the equivalent of taking a sheet and draping it over a car and it forming to the shape of that car. And that's exactly what's happening. The top model is taking the shape of the model that's right directly below it. And that's not what we want. We want the two models to merge together. So if you ever wondered, if I go into the properties here and you ever wondered what these little horseshoe shape, oh, let's get back to here. If I go into the properties here and you wonder what these shapes are, add, subtract, merge, merge low, and multiply were, well, generally when something is in an add mode, it's going to take on the shape of whatever's underneath it. What we need to do is we need to set these models to a merge. And we're going to merge high, which is the upside down U with the shaded area there. That's our merge. Merge low means that the top model would merge to the lowest part of the bottom model. And we don't want that. We want to merge at the highest point. But changing it in the properties here doesn't do really anything for me because my level is still set to add. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the combine mode level of level 2, right click on it and change it to merge. Okay. And you'll see how that immediately changed to where these two models are now meshing together, merge. I'm also going to merge the bottom level as well. Okay. So now we've got this Flourish here and everything, but you can see that, it's merged and it's not, it's getting kind of eaten up by the bigger model that's below it. So what I want to do is I do want to go into the properties of this lower Flourish here, and I'm going to go into the properties of it, and I could have clicked on the black wrench, but I'm going to give it a base height, meaning the straight meat underneath it. I want to raise I don't want to change my shape height. I want to change the base height, put some meat underneath it, and I'm going to put about a 1/4 inch of meat underneath that to raise it up. Okay, give it some meat to raise up to where it is over this. Now, if we look and everything, we could say, maybe I want to go lower than a 1/4 inch and all that, but we can't just look at one part or the other. We got to kind of look at everything. And let me stop moving around here. And if I lower that, oops, let me work with me there, boys and girls. If I get lower, then, part of my model is going to be absorbed by the lower model here. I'm still not high enough to get this flower. If you notice that green tint there, that green tint is saying that part of my selected component is covered by the model that's below it. And so there's more model underneath there. If I gave this a base height of 0.3 and raised it up and everything, we still have more model to go and everything. And it just depends on where we want to be, how much base height we want to give. And I'm fine with the 1/4 inch or 0.3, whatever. I'm going to go with a 1/4 inch. I'm going to bring it back down. I'm fine a little bit of this model being kind of blended in. I want it to kind of come into that on its own there. All right. So the red means that model is selected in my component tree. The green tints that you see mean that part of that selected model is hidden by the model below it. Okay, okie dokie. All right, so let's look at this straight on. Let's kind of see where we're at here straight on and everything. And so far, so good. Let's come down here. And my big thing is looking at reveals and stuff. Notice that my little center kind of nice little decorative raise here is not meshing very well with the center of this. And I don't know about you guys and girls and all that, but I'm not anal or OCD or anything like that, but that would always catch my eye. It really would, and it would drive me crazy and stuff, knowing that I could do something. But if I come and look over here, I'm lined up with my center. What's up with that? You know what I mean? So what we're going to do is, if I right click on this base model here, I can go down to its, select it first. I can go down to its object properties. And that will allow me to turn that fading, that grayscale off, so that I can see the full color even when that object is not selected. And let's move this center line out of the way for a minute. And here, it's hard to detect. Let me bring it down some. On the screen, it's probably hard to detect, but you know, with a grayscale model, your darker areas are your deeper parts, your lighter areas are your shallower parts, you know, the top. And so I can see the, you know, different shades and everything kind of giving me an idea where that little center ridge is. And so what I want to do is I want to kind of align my model with that center ridge. And in the 2D view, may not help me to be able to see what in the world I'm doing, but if I go to my 3D view, I can absolutely control and work in the 3D view as well. And let's get this straight on, zoom in, and I'm going to pull it straight up so I can see where I'm working here. And what I'm shooting for is that I'm pretty close to center here. I can still hold down my control key and use things over and bump it in, you know, small increments while holding my control key and stuff. And that was one bump too many, so hold down that control key and come back. All right, I'm kind of happy with that there and everything. Okie dokie, okie dokie. Now, that to me looks much better as far as that goes. All right, now as far as my placement here, I'm happy with the placement. I could lower this down a little bit, you know, maybe a little bump to separate my two models ever so slightly to where this ridge kind of comes down and then it transitions into, you know, that upper part there. You know, or I could say, you know, I don't want to, you know, have that, you know, dip there, and I could just simply move it back up and have it just blend right straight in. However, you know, whatever looks good to you. Okay. All right. So I'm going to bump it down 2 times. 1, 2. That'll be good for me there. Okay. All right. Now, here's where we start getting into clipping and things. I do not want this crown on this model. Now, before clipping and before mirroring and all that stuff, we used to have a spire to be able to have a, you know, a lot of control with these models and what we can do and what we can keep and not keep and add and all that. So mirroring came out and it gave us with VCarve Desktop Pro a lot more power. You know, when version 10 came out, clipping came, and that really kind of changed the game as well, because now I can choose to clip away parts of models that I don't want and add other parts to them and things. In this case, on this model here, I don't want the crown. It doesn't suit me. Don't want it. I'm thinking about putting a banner here with a name or something. I don't know. You know, I was just playing around earlier, but I know I don't want that crown. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my lower flourish here, or design, and I'm going to go up to the Create Vector Boundary tool and create a boundary around there. So it's going to draw a vector line, basically tracing out the boundary. Okie dokie, okie dokie. Now I'm going to go back into this model here and go back into the properties and turn the fading back on to make it a little bit easier for you guys and girls to see. But what I want to do is basically I want to cut the vector in these 2 points here and continue it across to basically get rid of the outline trace from around there. So let's go over to our drawing tools. Go to node editing. The object is grouped together right now, so we're going to ungroup it. We're going to just say yes to ungroup it so we can work with it. And I'm going to zoom in real tight, real tight, real tight. And my line is all kinds of crazy. That's fine. It's following the model. But I just want this last node before it gets into that sweep. This last node here, I want to right click and I want to cut the vector right there. And I want to do the same thing on the other side. Excuse me. And this one's a little back further, so we'll grab that one there and cut it there. Now what that's going to do is I can get out of node editing mode, and now I can remove that outline trace. I can take this vector and join it with a smooth curve. And it's going to give me a slight curve, not a great curve, but a slight one. And I can go back into node editing, and I can adjust that curve accordingly. Now, more so than a curve, I'm actually, instead of a Bezier curve, having to pull these anchors and, you know, kind of mess with them and get it just right and all that stuff. I'm going to undo that. I'm simply going to right click on this and turn it to an arc. That way I have a center point that I can pull up. Okay, just give myself a nice arc. And I want that to kind of arc right through there. Now that I've done that, this model, this entire model here, has a perimeter around it, around everything. And let's select all the vectors except for these two inner ones. I don't need those. I actually don't need all the other vectors selected, I don't think, but I'm going to select them anyway. But everything is selected and protected. Whatever's inside the vectors is going to be protected, and whatever's outside of them is going to be removed. Okay? It's going to be removed. So let's go into the 3D view here. And we're going to go into our modeling tab over here, and on that flourish, on that level, we're going to right click and we're going to select clipping. And when we down is going to be removed. It's going to clip it away. Okay. Now let's look a little closer. If we examine this and everything, notice that it clipped the crown away, but it left a little bit of this raise here, and that's going to interfere with my model that I'm going to add up on top here and all. So what I want to do is I want to go in here and adjust this arc a little bit. Let's go into node editing, and I'm going to bring that arc down just a little bit. It's not going to be a true circle. It's going to be just a little lower. And let's get in there a little tighter. And I'm going to pull that down ever so slightly. There. Now I've altered the border. I've altered the border, you know, that clipping border, if you will. But the model has not changed. It will not change until I go back into that level, turn off the clipping so it can kind of reset, and then engage the clipping again. Okay. Okie dokie. All right. So each time, if you make alterations and you trim something out or what have you, you need to deactivate the clipping function and then reactivate it after you've made your alterations to that boundary or that border, you know, however it may fall. All right. Okay. So now I have, you know, basically kind of an open surface here, and I want to add something to this. Now, at first, when I was first looking at this, I went into my clip art here and I grabbed which flourish was it that I grabbed? I grabbed this guy and I threw him up here at the top. And notice that he's gone, right? There's nothing there. All I see is a red outline that something's selected, but it's not showing. That's because when I just drag and drop that model in there, I dropped it onto the level that was being clipped. So that new model I just dropped in there is not in my boundary, so it's going to be clipped. And when I clip it, it's gone, right? So I need to create a new level, and we'll call this class level 3. And I need to put that flourish in that level that has no to it, and also it will add to my model. Okie dokie, okie dokie. Now, I actually don't like that model, so we're going to get rid of it because it doesn't look anything like any other part of this design. So let's get rid of that. Still keep level 3 active, and let's go grab another option, and it's going to be this guy right here. All right. Now, on this guy, what I want to do with him is I'm going to rotate him. Rotate, rotate, rotate. Keep rotating, keep rotating. All right. And I'm going to size him. Oh, I'm going to size him up, make him bigger. Make him bigger. And I'm going to bring him right up to kind of the top of that. Now, I want to actually bring him over. Bring it over, not him. It's no gender there. It's it. Bring it over. And I've got an imaginary center line here, you know. Let's turn that off and let's grab a guideline here and snap to the center of my board. All right, got an imaginary center line. And I want to bring this over to where part of it is over the center line. And I'm going to say right about there. And then I'm going to rotate this down. And get it back into place. Let's zoom back in there. Get it back into place. And what my goal is to kind of cover up there. So I want the edge coming right to that arc and all. Now, if we look at this in the 3D view, once again, it's taking on the shape of the model that's underneath it. You know, it's not merging with the model because that component and that level is still set to add. So I'm going to change the combine mode of the level to merge. So it merges with it. And of course, my model has no thickness to it whatsoever. So I'm going to go into the properties and I'm going to give it about a 1/4 inch of base. It's all about that base, that base, that base. Build that up and everything. And I'm going to, you see the top of the model's getting cut off here. The top of that Flourish is getting cut off here. I'm going to bring that down. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is because, and I'm not going to end up using this in the end and all, but the reason why I'm showing you this is because I want to show you how that mirror function works for us. I want to go big. I got room down here on my board, so I'm going to select everything. Select everything, and I'm going to move it down on my board. Just to give myself some headroom up there. All right, so let's look at this 3D view. And notice on the 3D view here that I'm still getting that ring or that lip, you know, and everything added, you know, in there. And it's kind of poking through. If I deselect these guys here, you can see the top of that lip is still shining through, right? And I need to change my level. Got it already changed to merge there. Wonderful. And I need to give myself a little bit more of a clip. So I got to go into node editing mode. And let's pull this down just a little bit more. ever so slightly. And I gotta disengage clipping and re-engage it. Okay, so that way it'll get rid of it. And now I can put my flourish where I want. Let's build this. Oh, I'm still in node editing mode. Get out of node editing mode. Go back to your selection mode. And I'm going to bring this up to right about there. All right, let's get into full 3D view now and kind of work in 3D view. And on my 3D view, I still don't have enough base or shape height or what have you to, to conceal or get this flourish above this model. So I need to come into those properties, the properties, and I'm going to give it a bit of a shape height. I'm going to go up to 0.375. That's going to puff this up, the shape on this up. It's going to puff it up. There you go. And I'm going to give it a little bit of base height. Not much. Get, in here. And I don't care about I don't care what's happening over here on the right side, or the left side. All I care about is what's on the right side, because I'm about to mirror this using the level mirror. And whatever it looks like on the right, it's going to look like on the left. So on that height, I don't need so much material above this little ridge right here. So I'm going to back it down just a bit. So I'm going to go, instead of 0.25, I'm going to go 0.265. Let it reset itself. Let it come down just a little bit. And that's good for me. I don't care that it's sticking out over there. And I can see the little green nub over there where it's sticking out and all that, because that's going to be gone here in just a moment. So let's close that and let's talk about mirroring. So this level 3, how the mirroring works is basically in mirror mode, we can mirror things from left to right, the left side of the board to the right side of the board. We can mirror from right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top. So think of that board cut into 4 equal, quadrants, and, the bottom quadrant, I can mirror things that are in the bottom to the top, top to the bottom, left to right, right to left. I can even mirror anything in the left top quadrant over to the right quadrant, and so on and so forth. Well, in this case, I want to mirror my right side to the left. And so if I turn on mirror mode right to left, what that's going to do is you won't see anything happen in the 2D view, but in the 3D view now, we now have a mirrored component, and it gives us the ability, and notice that it took away anything that was over that center line. So all of this tail area here, it removed that tail area, mirrored this over, and merged it together perfectly, creating a nice merge. So it gives us the ability to create all kinds of ways. So we could create components from what we have. We could create all kinds of new components and models just using, mirroring and clipping. We can really be creative. Let's stop here for just a quick second. And Fred Grover has a question. It says, Lainey, I noticed when you clipped the crown off, it still shows up in the 2D view. Is this normal? Yes. So even though that we clipped the crown away, it's still showing up in the 2D view because it's still that component. It's still part of that component, but it's removed from the 3D view. And our toolpath is only going to be calculated and create a toolpath on what is visible in the 3D view. So our component, our little grayscale is still visible. The crown's still visible here, but that does not matter because it is outside of our clipping boundary, and therefore it's only it's invisible or not visible and won't be seen in the 3D view. And that's what our toolpath is going to be created on. Okay. Now I'm going to take this entire model here and everything, all the vectors and all, and I'm going to hit F9 to center it up on my board. Get that little tip in there. And all. Now, when we do this, I want you to show you something. I just moved these vectors, right? Even though, you know, I selected them and all. If we go back to the 3D view, look, my clip came back. That little, that last clip I did. So you've got to stay aware of that. If you make any movements, any adjustments to that vector, that clipping vector, you've got to go in, disengage clipping, and re-engage it on the new, whatever it may be, right? Now, notice that it clipped away in the center of my clock here. Don't want that. The reason why it did it is, I got to turn clipping off. The reason why it did that is because that was selected. All right, I only need the outside boundary. Okay, the outside boundary selected. So let's go back in there and turn clipping back on. And there we go. Okay. So now, you know, this was kind of, I was going this direction earlier, and I thought, you know, when I looked at this straight on, I don't know, it was a little much, you know, and let's get Fred's comment off the screen. All right. So Fred, hopefully that answered your question. You know, this is kind of the direction I was going earlier when I was trying to create this this wall clock or mantel clock or what have you. And I'm going to show you how we can turn this into a mantel clock by adding a base to it very easily. But I thought that's a little much. You know, it almost it's almost kind of as bad as the crown was. It just doesn't do anything for me unless I added something over here and here to kind of tie these ends in with this. And I thought, wait a minute, look at these shapes. And if you look closely at this shape here, this shape right here, and you look closely at this shape right here, if we go into our clip art, there's actually a shape that looks just like that. And I thought, okay, so let me bring that shape in. And let me see if I can creatively kind of blend all this together and tie it in to where it looks like just one big, beautiful, funky arrangement. We're ultimately going to probably put a banner in here with a name, but notice that when I brought this part in, look what happened over here, right? It mirrored it. It mirrored it because it got brought in onto the level that has that right to left mirroring, meaning whatever I do to this component here is going to be mirrored to the other side. And right now I'm kind of okay with that. So first thing I need to do with this is let's kind of play with this a second, and let's spin this around. We got all kinds of views and stuff. We could mirror it itself, but let's do a little rotation here. Rotate, rotate, rotate. Okay. And let's take this down to right about here. Maybe right there. And let's give this property, let's give it a little bit of base as well. I'm going to give it about a 1/4 inch of base, just like everything else. Give it some thickness and all. And let's go into the 3D view and let's see where we're heading here. So it's kind of getting there. It's not too bad, right? It's kind of getting there, but you know, I need to kind of build it up a little bit. So I'm going to give it a little bit of shape height. Right now, I'm going to go, instead of 0.1968, let's go 0.215. Let's build it up just a little bit, a little under 1/4 of an inch. Kind of give it some heft. Not bad. And then let's bring this up to 0.3. Okay. And then let's go over to, let's move this over here. Let's go over and let's bring this right up to the edge and down right here to where these two areas kind of connect right here into this edge right here. Let's bring this down to about like look at this in the 3D view. All right. So I'm happy with the way this looks and everything. And I'm actually kind of happy with, let me get over here, with how it kind of transitions back to this and everything. But I'm not happy with this right here. Dun, 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 dun. That's where the clipping layer comes in. Or not clipping layer, but clipping tool. Because I can still add clipping to this level as well. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a vector boundary. Now you're going to see something crazy go on. Even though there's nothing over here, this is mirrored, right? So in the 3D view, you know, it goes all the way across. And even though there's nothing there, when I do a border trace, a boundary trace, if you will, it's going to trace the entire boundary of the mirrored side too. It's creating my vector boundaries. And the reason why it does that is in case I have to do a profile cut to cut this part out when it's all said and done and stuff, it's giving me my profile. You know, it's giving me that boundary, everything that's mirrored and stuff, which is pretty cool, right? Right. All right. Now, in the case of this, I don't want the I don't want this particular vector border right now, not yet. What I want to do is on this one, I want to turn the mirroring off just for a minute. No mirroring. Turn it off just for a second. And then I want to create that vector border. So it just creates the boundary just around this because I'm going to alter this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this boundary here and I'm going to go into node editing. And we're going to clean up this boundary by, first of all, we're going to cut the vector way back here. Cut it. And down here, cut it. And we're going to get rid of this part, delete. Okay. We're going to take this vector up here, and we'll fix that in a minute, but we're going to take this vector and we're going to rejoin it with a smooth curve. All right, smooth curve. And then I'm going to go into node editing mode, and I'm going to make that curve trace this outline right here. So we're going to pull that curve back to right about here. And I'm going to insert a point right there. Insert a point. So I can pull that point down into that corner a bit. Okay. So I can pull that point into that corner a bit. And now I'm going to flex this curve. When you don't have it, all the nodes selected, let's undo that. Control Z. I'm going to flex this curve over in this direction here. And this one in this direction. Get on out there. A little bit more. A little bit more. Okay. Now I'm going to fine tune it. So I'm going to pull this node over to right there. Fine tune my line a little bit. Right about there is good. Okay. Up here, get really down into it. I'm going to get down into this corner here. Kind of flex this line this way a bit. And adjust my curve And now it's just kind of a matter of finessing that curve to where, you know, we get close to what we want. Okay, that's good enough for government work for me. Now up here, I need this curve to kind of wrap around this one. Okay, and so I'm going to just basically, I'm actually going to pull this point down here and delete this point, delete this one. And then I'm just going to, actually, I needed to not delete that one. Sorry, I'm going to insert a point there, and I'm going to pull that back over here. Just get that flex a little bit. All right, that point's good. And then down here, I'm fine with that, but I just need to bring this down. And I'm going to insert a point right about here and pull that over to here. And now I got this funky thing going on. I'm going to fix that. Straighten her out. Straighten her out. I don't care that there's white space there. That's fine. This is, I'm using this as a trim boundary and all. And now I can go ahead. I should be able to adjust this curve about like that, just to get me kind of right around that. All right. So with that being done, I can go ahead and go back to that model level. First things first, mirror mode. Mirror left to right, or right to left. Sorry, right to left. Now what that's going to do is that's going to mirror the component. And let's turn off this. So that's going to mirror this component, but nothing's clipped yet. It's still the component, right? Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to, with the mirroring on, I'm going to select this component again. And you can create different, by the way, if these vectors start getting a little crazy for you, put them on different layers and stuff and everything. That way, you don't get confused and stuff, and all that. All right. So with my object selected here, get selected there, boys. I'm going to go ahead. I got mirror mode on, and I'm going to go ahead and create. Oh, get out of node editing. I got mirror mode on. I'm going to go ahead and create another vector boundary. Remember, with mirror mode on, when it creates the boundary, it's the other side, right? Okay, it's going to draw the other side. Now, it drew the other side with the unclipped area still unclipped, right? So, don't want that. We want to turn clipping on first. So we got to select this vector. Turn clipping on level 3. Okay, so if we look there, you see it cut that off, right? Cut that off. And then we're going to now create our vector boundary. Don't you be a pain in the butt. Don't be a pain in the butt. Turn clipping off. Got mirror mode. Make sure I got mirror mode on. Sorry, mirror mode, right to left. Let's get in 3D view. That way I can see what the heck I'm doing, because I get screwed up too sometimes. We're going to go ahead and now that we're mirrored, we're going to go ahead and turn. create our vector boundary. Oops, got a set component. Create our vector boundary. That's going to create the boundary with our little clip there. And that's fine for a minute. We'll leave that like that. But now I'm going to turn clipping on. Oops. Select the vector that I want clipped. We're going to turn clipping on. Are you going to sit there and aggravate me here today? Oh. 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 Hold on a second. I'm doing that all wrong, guys. I'm such an idiot. Turn clipping off. Let's delete that. Gosh, Lenny, you're such a... the clipping layer keeps what you want and not what you don't. So let's delete this. Take this guy right here. Sorry, my bad, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to mirror that vector. I'm going to mirror this vector right here one time. We're going to mirror it to the left. Not the left, horizontally along the job center. There we go. Jeez Louise. And that way it's mirrored over here too. And then I'm going to write about here. I'm going to line up my humps. I shouldn't have to do that. Give me a second, guys. I'm screwing up on you. I shouldn't have to do that. I should be able to go to my level. Turn mirror mode off for a minute. Mirror mode off. No mirroring. So I've got my shape. If I come in here and clip that shape, right click and turn clipping on, it should clip that model away. And then if I come over here and turn mirror mode on, right to left, it's still not going to give me the right side or the left side because it's not within my vector. So I do have to get my vector over there because it wants to be a pain in the ass. Just kidding. All right, mirror mode. So now my vector, sorry guys, we're going to get through this real quickly. We're going to flip it horizontally, just like that. Okay. And that should be good there. And then I need to trim these areas together. So I'm going to get my scissor tool out. And I'm going to trim away this vector, this inside vector, this outside vector, these two little lines there. So that's going to come over and it's going to connect. We're going to get rid of, which one do I want to keep? Which one do I want to keep? Get rid of that, and get rid of that, and that. Okay, so that should be one continuous vector now, all the way around. Oh, I got another little line right there. Just delete that out of there. All right, that should be the same thing on both sides. Wonderful. Right there, that's probably going to be my biggest issue. We'll find out here in a minute. Let's go back into 3D view. Let's split the view so we can both see what's going on. Let's zoom in here. All right, with that selected, let's go into that level and let's clip it One open vector is being identified. Let's find that open vector first of all. Right-click, select all open vectors, and it's open. That means it's not closed somewhere. So let's figure out where that is. How are we going to figure out where it is? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go into node editing mode. All right. And where's my start point at? Down here. Okay. So there we go. There's a line right there that needs to go away. That's the open vector. So get my trimming tool out and cutter. And now we should have no open vectors in the design. Wonderful. This is what's live's all about when you screw up. All right. So here we go. We got mirror mode on. Okay. So we got mirror mode on. So now we got our vector selected. We're going to clip it. Clip it good. Ta-da! Okie dokie. All right. Now I can turn my other flourish back on. But wait. It's not within the clipping boundary, so it's not going to show because it's on that clip level. What does that mean? You guys know what it means. It means insert a new level. We'll call this class level 4. And put that flourish on its own level. And now we need to mirror it to the other side. So level 4 is going to get mirrored right to left. All right, let's take a look at this in retrospective here. All right, so not bad, but what's happening here? The new level that I just created is taking on the shape of what's underneath because that level is not, level 4 is in an add mode. It's not set to merge. We need it to merge with the metal, the model that's below it. Okay, always merge. All right, so that's looking funky. My God, for this small clock, that's going to look all crazy and stuff. But long story short, ladies and gentlemen, we could start building something off of this if we wanted to. We could. Now, if I kept this the way it is and everything, I could say that, you know, I just want this model to blend in here and come up and swirl, but I don't want it overlapping here. I want it just to kind of dead end, you know, right there. And I would have to, you know, create a clipping, you know, on that as well. And on that one, it would be easy enough to do. Simply just go in here, create a vector boundary on it. Okay, you see how it draws both sides? And then all we have to do is come in here and go into node editing. And this is the last time I'll do this because you guys have got it by now. Going to node editing. I'm going to cut the vector. Actually, I'm not going to cut the vector. I'm not going to cut the vector. I'm going to let the software cut it for me. I'm going to select this bad boy right here, get out of node editing mode. I'm going to select this vector right here, all of this. And I'm going to, all of it, good. Same thing on the other side. I'm going to select this, hold down that shift key, select all these vectors, all of it. Wonderful. I'm going to group those together, the group key. Okay, group. All right. I'm going to hold down my shift key and I'm going to select this outer boundary right here, this boundary that it's overlapping, right? This boundary that it's overlapping. Okay. And I'm going to go into my regular trim tool, not my scissor tool, my regular trim tool. And I'm going to clear everything inside of that boundary. Clear it away. That way, it trims the vector for me and clears it away. Okay. It redraws it for me and clears it all away. Gotta love that. All right. Now, over here, I don't need this little vector. You know, it's going to keep this little nub right here, but it's going to get rid of everything right here, you know, because it's not inside this vector, right? That's all by itself and everything. And so this little guy right here is going to get removed. And I think I'm fine with that. I think I'm actually okay with that. So I'm going to leave it as it is here. And look, it did both sides for me, right? So what does that mean now? That I have those vectors selected, I should have to just go over to level 4. And let's get into 3D view and let's see how good we are. Level 4 and clip. Bam. Holy banoli. First try. That way it looks like the part is coming behind the clock base. You see, it looks like it's coming here and it's coming behind this clock base. And there's that little pedal right there. And there's that little pedal, all that wonderful stuff. You know, it's coming behind here and then it just disappears. So, all right, you guys, we're going to stop here, right? You think that's a little bit ornate? That's a hell of a clock, right? Holy cow. There's a lot going on there. And everything, you know, I still think there should be something here, you know, maybe a piece of wood, like, you know, like this was holding something and like a barometer or a photo or something, you know, right? This is just crying. It's crying for something to hold me, you know, some piece of wood or some kind of model or something, you know, and all that stuff. But I'm okay with that for right now. There's nothing else in my clip art that, you know, I could put a medallion in there, you know, something. I could put a shell if I wanted to, which really has no place whatsoever being in it. I mean, I could really just start kind of doing her up. You know, I could take this guy right here and get him in there. Of course, he's in the wrong level. Let's put him up in not level 2. We actually got him. It doesn't need anything, but you know what I mean? You could just keep going and going and going. So I'm going to create a new level, last one. This will be class level 5. And let's take that Flourish that I just dropped in there and throw it on number 5. That has no mirroring, it has no modeling, it has no nothing and everything. And this has absolutely no place being in here whatsoever. Let's see what would happen if I rotate it 1, 2, 4 times a lady. You got a mirror? 2. Let it regenerate. 3. 4. Cut it off there at the top. Let's turn that level into a merge mode. Merge. We're going to take it out of there. I don't like it already, but that's all right. Let's go to combine mode and make that a merge. You know, and you know, we could fill it in with something, you know what I mean? It doesn't need anything, but you know what I mean? It was crying for something. Let's get rid of that. We don't need that in there. Okay. So looking at our model, this is what we've got right here. Now, if it were you, and I'm going to pose the question to you. Sorry, Fred Grover. Fred Grover asked a great question here. What key were you using for rotating? So when you have an object, when you want to rotate it counterclockwise, it's the number 9 key, and it moves by 45-degree increments. And the number 0 key moves clockwise 45-degree increments. So if I have a rectangle here, if I hit my number 9 key, it will rotate counterclockwise in 45-degree increments. And the number 0 key is clockwise, 45-degree increments. And that's the key that I was pushing. I should have called that out when I was doing it. Sorry, guys. But good call, Fred. All right. And then we have another question here. Once again, let's see here. Fred says, it would be nice if Vectric would show the mirror in the 2D view too, maybe in the future. Well, let's take a look at this in the 2D view and everything, and let's come down to this Flourish and everything here. And you know, we have our 2D view and show and hide in properties and stuff, which for the properties, that's just your regular properties and stuff. It's unfortunately not going to do that for us. It's in the 2D view. It's going to show, you know, the entire model except for what's being clipped. Maybe in the future one day, maybe not, you know, not sure. But, you know, if, you know, show this, it's not going to update and show the, you know, the clip view or 2D preview move to front. You know, it's not going to do that. So unfortunately, you know, it's going to still show that crown and everything else, you know, and it's not going to show that mirror and everything. It's going to create the vectors for it, but it won't show it in the 2D view. In the 3D view is where, you know, that's going to be at and stuff and everything. You know what I mean? So now I want to show this. This is very important. Right here, all these little fibers. Let me zoom in. Not fibers, but all these little edges right here are kind of flat and cut off. You know, they're not really merging into that model very well. Right? They're not merging into that model very well. You know, they're cut off right where we told it to, you know, and the height is higher and everything. So it's not really merging like it should. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my object and along with its vectors, my object along with its vectors, I believe that was all of them. Yep, same thing over here, my vectors, even this little guy. And I'm going to go ahead and bump that down just a little bit. And then I'm going to reduce, go into the properties and reduce the shape height or the base height Now, I'll leave the shape height alone, but I'm going to reduce the base height by 0.2. Bring that down. Okay. And then let me see here. I did it at the movies. Let's scale that. Oh, not that much. I want to bump that back up a little bit to where it was. Let's scale that down. And see how rough it is around the edges and stuff? On just that flourish there, just that one, I'm going to go into the smoothing tool here. The smoothing tool with just that selected. And I'm going to smooth out those edges a bit as soon as it's finished generating. It's not smoothing too well. See what happens when you go too far? All right, bear with me. We got a mess to clean up over here. And I think the edges are getting cut off by the clipping layer. So let me turn off clipping on this, and just to make sure that I am seeing what I'm seeing. So I'm going to turn off clipping, and it'll look like when the clipping is turned off. Yeah, and there they are right there. Right? So the clipping, the vectors are cutting off, too much into my model here, and it's cutting off the edges and stuff. And so what that means is on those clipping layers, or those clipping vectors, should I say, I need to offset them a little bit, outward a little bit, and I'll do the same thing over here. Hold down the shift key and select this one, and this one. And I'm going to offset those selected vectors outward just by 0.03125, by about a 32nd. I'm going to delete the original. Okay. There we go. And if I come back in here and turn clipping back on, level 4. There we go. So now I can see I need to come down just a little bit on the properties. Let's see here on the properties for level number 4 for that flourish. And let's bring the base height down just a little bit. Oh, a little bit more. Oh, a little bit more. There we go. All right. Nice blend. And no little fibers and funkiness and all that stuff. I need to take my model. And its vectors. Even this little guy down here. Okay, my model and its vectors. And this one too on this side. Even this little one down here. And I want to make that, I want to pull that over just a little bit. So, I'm I want to bump over just a little bit. I'm going to turn off clipping. This last turn off clipping, I'm going to turn off mirror mode. Okay. I'm going to delete these vectors over here. And I'm going to select my model and its boundary vectors. And, oh, you son of a gun. And its boundary vectors. I got to move the vectors with it now. So that one, this one, and this one. These are not part of that. So just those. Double click on it, and I want to scale this over just a bit. Maybe not that much. Look in the 3D view. What I'm looking at is how well it combines over here and stuff. And, you know, last thing I'm going to do is do a little bit of tilt, but let me get it pulled over a little bit more. I'm going to zoom in tight so I can get it to move a small amount. Some. Yep. All right, now turn mirror back on. Before I turn mirror back on, I'm going to take those selected vectors and I'm going to mirror them. That's the alignment tool, Lenny. Mirror tool, fourth icon on the transform objects. We're going to mirror that horizontally back over here to where it was. And then with these vectors selected, once again, this, and that guy right there, and this one, and this one. With all those vectors selected again, we're going to go ahead and go back into that tab for the last time. We're going to turn on mirror mode, mirror right to left, turn on clipping, clipping. Okie dokie. Now, wonderful. Now, last thing as far as blending is concerned and stuff. This little guy right there, he doesn't no longer need to be there. And I need this flourish to fade into this. Okay, I don't want to raise this up any. I could tilt it some. So if I go into its properties, that little blue box right there, if I go into its properties, I could turn on the tilt. And when you tilt, it's like shoving a wedge under the part. The first click is the thin part of the wedge. The second click is the thicker part of the wedge. Just remember that. So when I hit the set button, I have this anchor here. The first part is the thin part of the wedge, which is going to be down here. The second part is going to be the thicker part of the wedge, which is going to be up here. And if I put some degrees into that and shove that wedge up under that part, raise that end up, depending on how much I tilt it. You know what I mean? Okay. So it's like shoving a wedge under the part. All right. So now let's get back into straight on view here. Now we have, you know, a nice transitional blend. Okay, that's going to be it for our ornate clock. Now we got to create some tool paths and stuff. I was going to do a banner with a name across. Basically, if we did do a banner with a name across, let me show you what that looks like. I don't have to recreate it. I already have it created. The banner, let's go back over to our modeling tools here, and let's turn off class level 2, 5, 3, and 1. We can put them in order here in just a minute. Doesn't matter the order right at this point. And we turn on my original levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. You'll see where I was going with this, and I don't have the clipping on that banner level and all, but I was thinking, you know, maybe some type of banner going across with a name, and I don't know. I wasn't sold on it, and I don't know if I'm 100% sold on what we just created, but to spend an hour with you showing you clipping, the trials and tribulations and the pain in the butt stuff, and how you screw up and how I screw up and all that wonderful stuff, and end up with something that was pretty decent looking, which I think we did. I think we successfully created something that was pretty. You guys are going to get this file, by the way. All right. So we've got this ornate clock going on here, and I'm missing a level number 2 down here below. Now, this clock, the center is going to get cut out, and there's going to be a clock in here, and it's just something ornate, something to hang on the wall, something obnoxiously cool and creative. Who knows what you do with it, what kind of wood it would. You know, it's going to just be pretty nice, something. But what if we wanted something like this to sit on a mantle, right? And that means we'd have to have a base, right? A flat base and all. And this is the last thing we're going to do. And then we're going to create the tool paths. We're going to create the base. We're going to not use the base in this. I'm making a wall clock, but it'll just show you how we would approach making a base. Okie dokie. Okie dokie. What I'm going to do is I am going to add a new level here, a new layer, should I say, not level. And that way I can start creating some vectors on that layer and not have so many vectors going on to confuse you guys. And, because, see, it kind of gets wild, right? There's a lot of vectors. Those are all being used for trimming and clipping, and they're also going to be used for our profile cut and our border cut and all that stuff. Now, remember what I said a moment ago about these two little floating pieces here? They no longer serve a purpose, right there and right there. All we have to do is come in and delete that vector there and that vector there, right? All we have to do is go back into our part, make sure you got your right vector selected. Over here to this, hold down your shift key, Lainey. Hold her down there, son. Okay, just that. This outer perimeter and these two inside ones. I'm going to group them together so I don't have to do that again. Group those together so I don't have to keep selecting them. And all we got to do is, that was level 4. We just simply have to turn clipping off. Turn clipping back on. Okay, and that'll get rid of those 2 little nubs. You know, it's only gonna keep what's inside the vectors. All right, now knowing that, we're going to take this wall clock and we're going to turn it into this piece here. We're going to turn it into a mantle clock, if you will. Now, before I do anything, before I do that, one thing we do have to be aware of is my clock insert is 1 31/64, almost an inch and a half. Okay, 32/64 would be an inch and a half. 1 31/64. Let's call it an inch and a half. We'll just round up at 64th. But my model, if we look at the model's only 3/4 of an inch. You know, this whole thing, some meat. You know, I got to give it some thickness, some thickness. All right, so damn boy, you're thick. All right, so what we're going to do is we got to select all of our models. I'm going to hold down the shift key and select all of our models. Okay, and I'm going to go into the properties. Now, this is going to be the properties for the entire kind of component in itself and everything. Okay, so I'm going to add some thickness to this, and what my goal is when it's all said and done, to have an overall thickness of, you know, that inch and a half. Now, if we look at this 0.987, 0.625 or 265, if we go back into our setup here, our model is about 0.77 inches in height. I could go in and click set here and change the thickness to 1.5 inches, but that's going to change all of the components as well. Sorry, it's changing the shape and the base. And all I want to do on this is I want to add some base to this. I want back behind the component, okay, just to give it some meat and everything, so that my component and all is my clock and all is not hanging out of the back, because I want to hang this on a wall. Okay. Okie dokie. Now, when I do this, when I add that meat and everything back there, you know, I've got to be aware of my model thickness. I can't let it exceed my material thickness. Okay, and all. So I've got about 0.2247 more to go. So I'm just going to add that plus 0.2247, and I'm going to hit equals. I'm going to add that to the and that's going to give me right at, you know, 0.148, which my clock insert, that 1 31 seconds, 31/64, that is about 1.48 and some change. So I can go ahead and add another 0.02 to this. So if I make this 99.47, let it regenerate, I should bring it to about 1.5 inches. Okay. So now my model is, you know, my clock is, for my wall clock is what I want. Now that 1.5 inches, having that base, also gave me some thickness and all for this being a pretty decent size type mantle clock, you know, as far as being able to stand up on its own. It probably, you know, could. And these two little things right here could act as feet, you know, and it could probably balance on its own. But it's got some good height there and everything. So I'd much prefer that the surface, my clock surface, go all the way to the end, you know, of this. And so hanging on a wall, this is fine, and everything as far as my thickness and all goes. But sitting on a mantle, not so much. So now the question is am I going to create just a flat base to this so it has surface all the way across, which I'm planning on doing? Or am I going to create a base that's wider? Now, if I'm going to create a base that's wider, then I'm basically going to simply create a, let me get to the bottom of this, get to the bottom of it, get to the bottom. I'm simply going to create a vector that's going to flatten this area out here, you know, cut these two areas out there. And that's going to give me 2 glue points to glue to a wider base, right? If I was going to do it that way, if I was going to do a wider base to give it a little bit of, let's say a little more stability, you know, balance and all that, then I would simply, I wouldn't just have it sitting on this little nub here and this little nub here, these 2 low points. I would create a clipping vector to clip everything except for, you know, a nice flat spot here and a nice flat spot here. And that would give me 2 flat spots to glue to a solid base or something. But in this case, I would like to add a square base to this. And I'm not in a spire, so I can't just build a model. I can't just draw a rectangle and, you know, extrude that rectangle to create the base, right? I can't do it. I don't have it. You know, it's not there. But what I can do is I can go into my clip art and I can go over here to my panels and shields, right? My panels and shields. And, you know, I can find a pretty decent sized panel. Doesn't matter. We're going to be cutting the edges off of it and everything anyway. And I can drop a panel in here. Also under, let me see here if I have it under rotary ribbon tabs. Let me see here. I've got a rectangular tab there. I can use the tab instead of the shield or panels. So let's do that. Let's delete. So this should be a rectangular tab here. Let's drop that down. Now, when I drop it down, that model is not part of my collection. So it's going to want to have me log in to my my user account, my Vectric portal. And the same thing would apply to you guys and girls if your models are still up in the cloud and all in your account and all. It would have you log in to your account. So let me log in real quick. Y'all were hoping I'd log in over on the other side so you could see everything, huh? And let's see here. So you can get my models. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to click allow. Basically, it's going to connect my account and everything to my software. Once that's done, that model has just finished downloading, and I can now drag and drop it in. Okay, so if you ever, so that means they're still up in the cloud in your Vectric VNCO account. They're still in the cloud. And, you know, they're just, all you have to do is connect the account and log in and all. Now, this little old tab right here, let's take a look at her. We got to first go into the modeling tab, and I'm going to drop that tab up into level 5. Level 5 was what I was using earlier. You know, there's nothing to it. Now, that little bitty old tab right now is not anything, you know, but it will be when I scale it up. Okay, let's get into the 3D view and see what we got going on here. Oops. Going to the 3D view, I always move my model. Control Z to where you want to be and everything. Okie dokie. All right, now, currently right now, it is set to merge and everything. And if I go into the properties of this rectangle, you know, I'm just going to give it some thickness, some base height and all. All right. And now, as a square base, let me get this looking tight and right here for a minute. I want it daggum, just about right there. I'm going to bump it down just a little bit more, a little bit more. Hold down the control key so I can micro on my little, I want to get rid of that little light reveal right there. One more. Oh, it's so close. Now, as a square base, you know, and all that wonderful stuff, let me go ahead and expand it out. I want to kind of make it pretty well even with, you know, the outer edges here. I could even create a toolpath and V-carve in it or something like that, or whatever the case may be. I'm going to have to make my board a little bit wider. I'll tell you that right now. So everything fits on there. But, you know, all well and good, you know, as a square, you know, base, there's no decorativeness to it right now. But what I want to do is I'm going to use clipping on this, and I'm basically just going to take this and kind of round off with a nice subtle arc over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this model. I'm going to create a vector boundary. Okay. Now it's only going to create a vector boundary around what is on the board. My model is so big it's not on the board. But what we're going to do is I can't really size it up or size it down because it's all based off of my rings there, right? I can't just sit there and start scaling it and all. So I'm going to have to sneak over to my job setup here. And I got to close this one over here. You see that error in just a minute. That's my model thickness and all that stuff. But I got to go over to my job setup here, and that 12 inches, I'm going to, you know, now I'm standing pretty tall. I'm going to go 13 inches. Add another inch to it and click OK. And then my entire object here, I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to center it to my material. Okay, so now on my deselect everything, close the tool. Last but not least, I'm going to take this here and I'm going to pull this down, you know, to the bottom of my model. And I'm actually going to take my model and pull it down to the bottom of my board. Right there. Okie dokie. Now over here, I'm going to put some radiuses on the corners, or I could do a nice little swirl. Whatever I draw this vector to be like, it's going to trim this blank to that, right? And everything. But I'm just going to simply go into my fillet tool, and I'm going to put a nice, probably, let's go 2-inch radius. And let's go there and there. Over here too. Come on. Get to it, son. 2-inch radius. All right. It won't let me create the radius over there. You know, so it's saying, hey, no go, Joe. You see my little check mark's not popping up and all that stuff. So is my corner actually square? It looks square. Let's go back into that fillet tool again. Let's see here. Yeah, it's not reading it as a sharp point, or it's saying that my radius is not big enough. But I did it over here, so I should be able to do it over here, right? If I undo this one, still not going to let me do there. So there's something going on with that corner. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, go into node editing mode. I'm going to cut the vector here, cut the vector here. I'm going to delete this corner. Something was wrong with it. And I'm going to take my extend tool and I'm going to rejoin that, connecting it back together with, I know, is a sharp corner now. And if I open my fillet tool, it should. Why are you not letting me do that right there, son? All right, so let me do this one, but not that one. What's up with that, George? I'm going to back this down to 1 3/4 and let's see if that gives me. Still nothing. You're not liking it. I'll go back to my 2. All right. So we're gonna cheat the system. I'm gonna make my box a little bigger. I'm gonna go into my fillet tool. I'm gonna put that. Oh, you son of a gun! It don't like that up there. All right, not a problem. We're gonna go ahead and delete that. I'm going to draw my own rectangle just because I want to. I'm going to bring that rectangle down to my board there. And I don't know, maybe it just didn't like that. Yeah, it didn't like that tracing. It didn't like that tracing at all. I'm not sure why. I don't know why. So I'm just going to do just a very simple little arch here. I could even, engrave a name in here. Let's do that. Let's do some V-carve text. We've been dealing with models all night. Let's do my mother's maiden name. And let's go with a nice. This clock looks a little Victorian, right, in a way, somewhat. So let's kind of let's match it up, and let's make that about 1 inch tall. All right, let's get that centered left to right. Not the distort tool, the alignment tool. Get that centered in there. All righty, Aphrodite. All right, let's go ahead and with this vector selected, if we go into our modeling, the last thing we have to do on our rectangle here is we've got to what do we got to do? We got to turn on clipping. Turn on our clipping. Go into there and, you know, we've got a nice base there with, you know, rounded edges, what have you, part of the model. Now, notice, look at all the clipping, all the stuff up here, right? It all went crazy because we moved, remember, we moved everything, sized it, and we went to the center. All we have to do is come back in, and on my original level 1, this flourish here, with that original boundary selected, I simply have to come in to that level, turn clipping off, and turn it back on. Okay. With this vector up here, I simply have to go into level 3, turn off clipping, turn it back on. Okay. And then finally, remember I grouped those together so I wouldn't have to screw with them anymore. That was level 4. That's that flourish right there. Turn clipping off and turn it back on. Okay, so we should be all back to normal and everything looking good. We've got ourselves a nice little mantle and all here, little mantle mount. You know, it'll balance. It'll stand up. I think it would. 1.5 inches thick. Yeah. All right. Just tell them, don't bump my big old clock. That's all you do. You know, you can scale this down. Scale it down, and they have different size faces of clocks and things like that. I just wanted to, you know, we're playing around with clipping and all. We're going to wrap this up right now with our toolpath. So with our toolpath now, our 3D finish toolpath is only going to create a toolpath on, you know, the model that it sees. But I got to go back over to my job setup, because if you recall, when I added that base in there, it created an error. Right, my base, you know, is much thicker than 1.5 inches, so it created an error. And you can tell it's thicker than 1.5 inches because we know that this is 1.5 inches and it exceeds that by that much. Now, I could, if I want this to be thicker and all, I could carve this out of a thicker piece of material, you know, a 2-inch thicker piece of material, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to simply go back into my modeling tab and go to that rectangle there, and I'm going to go into its properties, and I'm going to reduce the height down to 1.5. Okay, and that should clear up my error, and I should be good to go. Okay, crazy looking clock. Still not 100% satisfied on the top there. You know, still not 100% sold on that, but hey, you know, it looks good. Looks good enough. All right, let's create some toolpaths and let's wrap this up. We want to end here by 9:30. We've got about 15 more minutes, and we got some questions and all. Before we create the toolpaths, let's go to these questions because we do have a lot of questions. Let's knock these out real quick. Continue this. Let's see here. Laney clip crown. It'd be nice if they showed that. It answered my question. It would be nice. Bear with me a second. From Toronto. Hello. Okay, so we got Fred Grover. So will you be continuing on this one, Laney, to show how we might add something to the top and how to toolpath this for the clock? Yes, we're going to do that right now, Fred, and everything. And I'm not going to add any. This is as far as I'm going as far as adding to this clock. But we're going to create all the toolpaths for it now. The second question we had, Yes. So Fred asked another question. Fred, you're interactive today, buddy. Is there a way to make the outside edges have a bevel without the straight line edge? So basically, he's asking on. I'm assuming you're asking on this base right here, Fred. Is there a way that we can bevel the outside edges instead of without the straight line edge? Is there a way to make them bevel without the straight line edge? Okay. So a bevel would almost, I'm assuming you're referring to like a chamfer of some sort, and we can create that cut. We can do a bevel cut. It'd only be on the front. We wouldn't be able to do the back, but we could create that beveled edge with a V-bit, kind of give it a nice chamfer on the front here. We have to be careful as to how deep that bevel could go, because we only have a little bit of room here, but we could break that corner with a V-bit cut and everything, a V cut to kind of break that edge so it wasn't so beveled or so straight. We could take, we couldn't use a rounding toolpath because a rounding toolpath would cut into our model. We could increase our board size and put a little bit of a pedestal here, and then kind of give ourselves a beveled edge and give us some space between our model and all. We could put a little pedestal right there in between those two parts to kind of raise it up off the stand. I don't want to do that. But yeah, we could create a profile toolpath with a V-bit to do a little bit to break that edge, to give it a little bit of a bevel. But without being in a spire or anything, I can't sprawl the bottom. I can't sprawl the bottom out and then have the top be narrow and the bottom be wider. I can't taper it off in anything because I don't have the modeling tools in Pro to do that. If I had a spire, I could absolutely do that. But we're working with what we have in Pro. So we'll do that. And then let's see here, Fred, you got a couple other questions and we'll move on. Let's see here. I mean, on the whole of the model, if this makes sense. So like flowering from one edge to another, flowing, not flowering, flowing from one edge to another, from left to right, top to bottom. Is it possible using the base height adjustment? Yes. All right. Yes, it is. When adjusting the base height, right? Let me answer one question at a time. I'm trying to read them all. Fred, you're just knocking them out for me. So Fred's question was: is there a way to make a bevel? I'm not sure what I'm assuming he's referring to a chamfer, but then he continues on. Says like flowing from one edge to the other, from left to right, and top to bottom. Flowing from one edge to the other, left to right, top to bottom. A bevel. So basically widening the base. Is that what you're referring to, Fred? Let me know. And we could do that. So we're going to be cutting this out of a 1.5 inch thick piece of material, Fred. All right. Yeah, Fred, everybody's going to get the files also. And I'm sorry, guys, you're hearing me stutter. No, I'm just reading Fred's questions. I don't need to be throwing them up on the screen. Fred, we'll have to get after class and go over some of these questions because we'll have to go one-on-one or something, and you'll have to explain to me what you're referring to. But yeah, everybody gets these models, bud. Okay. All right, let's get back to making our toolpaths and everything. And then I'll also show a profile toolpath to break the edge on this a little bit, just to show that bevel and all. All right, so my material setup here, I've got 1.5 inch thick material. You know, that means that if I'm carving out of 1.5 inch thick material, it's right up to the edge. So, you know, I've got to be mindful of that. If I, you know, if I'm carving on this, I got to be mindful of that, because I got to make sure I don't get flat spots where my curves and stuff are, because there's no material, you know, it's the top surface of your board is flat. You know, that means all these nice curves and contours are going to be flat. So as Fred was saying, we may want to increase the thickness of the material a bit to, you know, accommodate. Or unfortunately, they don't make a smaller clock insert. So you know, I would have to make my material thicker in order to, you know, achieve what I want, and stuff. So, but we'll leave it at 1.5 inches thick, and we'll see what we get with flat spots and everything, and how that affects us and stuff. So the first thing is we're going to go into the 3D finish toolpath, and on the 3D finish toolpath, I do not need to machine this flat area. I do not need to waste time machining this flat area. Okay, so with the model as a whole, if you will, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to turn off bear with me a second. I'm going to get all my vectors here. Make sure they're all selected. Don't need the model selected. I don't need no model selected, just all the vectors. And I'm going to move them to layer 2. Okay. I'm going to take my base here, and I'm going to move that to layer 2. It's already there. Good, wonderful. So that way I can turn off. Oh, you son of a gun. Hold on a second. I moved them to the wrong layer. Let me select all my vectors again. I do not need my models selected. I want them to stay on layer 2. You son of a gun. Okay, turn that. Oh, you son of a gun. My software is creeping up on me. There we go. Turn that off. Turn that off. All right, no model selected. I want to move those vectors to layer 3. Wonderful. So I can turn layer 3 off for a minute. Wonderful. And I'm going to create a new layer. And this is going to be my profile cut layer. And I should be able to select my entire model here. And create a vector boundary around the entire model, clipping. And that should give me one solid continuous vector all the way around that I'm going to use for my profile cut. Okay, my profile toolpath. Okie dokie. Okie dokie. All right. So that being said, let's go ahead and on this, I'm going to remember what I was saying before I started all that stuff about the vectors is I do not need to machine this flat area, right? So I'm going to copy this boundary, this vector boundary here. I'm going to copy that to a new layer. And this is going to be my modeling boundary. Modeling, let's be a little bit more proficient. Toolpath boundary, modeling toolpath or model toolpath boundary. Okay, I'm going to make it red. All right, and on that model toolpath boundary, I'm going to turn off the profile cut vector for a moment. I'm going to go into node editing here. Ungroup that, go into node editing. And I'm going to cut the vector right here. Come over to this corner. Zoom in and cut the vector on this bottom node right there. Okay. I'm going to take that selected vector. I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to take that vector that I just cut free and everything, and I'm going to hold down the shift key and turn it off, turn my boundary back on, and group it back together. Okay. And now I'm going to delete this. And on this one, I'm going to join it with a straight line. Give it a second. Oh, I got to ungroup it. You son of a gun. Okay, ungroup and join with a straight line. Work with me, Junior. There we go. Join with a straight line. And this is going to be my boundary. This outside boundary all the way around is going to be my modeling boundary. All right, so we're going to use the selected vector as the boundary on this. I am going to use a 1/8 inch tapered ball nose bit. I believe I can get away with an 1/8 inch tapered ball nose bit for that and still get the detail that I want. So we'll choose that. I do not let me see here. Do I want to do a boundary offset? No. No boundary offset. I'm going to raster along the x-axis, which is a 0 angle, and this is going to be my 3D finish cut. Let that calculate, and then we'll calculate the rough cut, which I should have done first. But now, Kevin Wilkerson, you were saying moving the start point, maybe. I believe Kevin, you were saying move the start point when you were talking about why it wouldn't round over the corner of that rectangle tracing and stuff. And you very well probably was the reason. I probably, it might have had something to do with the start point, but it just the way it traced, simply redrawing it as a rectangle, that fixed it. So it was there. Fred, yeah, man, I love that you got a lot of questions, but I don't unfortunately have enough time to answer each of those questions. We'll have to do them one-on-one. My phone number, I'll post it down in the comment section. My phone number is 3952-404-3951. You can call me anytime. I just have a meeting tonight with another customer that was supposed to be at 9:30. So I got to kind of wrap things up. Man, this took a lot longer, but I really wanted to nail home clipping and mirroring and stuff to see if that gives you guys and girls something to think about. Just remember, whatever's inside the boundary, it will keep. Whatever's outside of the boundary, it will clip away when you're doing clipping. All right, so let's go ahead and let's make sure that my preview simulation quality is not too high, so it'll be fast. And let's close that and let's do a rough cut. Definitely going to need a rough cut for this. On the rough cut, I'm going to use the selected vectors as the boundary. And I'm going to Z-level raster along the x-axis. And I'm going to calculate that. I'm using a 1/4 inch end mill. All right. Yes, Camaro 375. Are you an authorized retailer of Vectric? Yes, we do sell Vectric software. Digitalwoodcarver.com. Yep. Okay, so let's turn our 3D rough up here. Let's turn off our 3D finish for a moment, and let's preview the selected rough cut here. And I want to show you where these flat spots are going to come in most likely, on our rounded edges, because, the top surface of our board is flat. So this is where maybe, a thicker piece of material. Unfortunately, I don't have a, if I glue 2 pieces of 3/4 inch material together, then that's going to give me 1.5 inches, right? All day long. Well, this may give me an opportunity to laminate a smaller, thinner piece of contrasting material to create like a center band, if you will, between those 2 3/4 inch pieces to create like a little accent piece or something, a little center accent, or just, get a chunk of wood, about 1 inch and 1 3/4 or so. All right, so there's the rough cut. Let's go ahead and do the finish cut, 3D finish cut. Preview the selected toolpath. And so far, I'm not seeing a lot of tool marks and stuff. The 1/8 inch bit probably is going to give me a good quality. If I want a little bit more detail, then I'd probably step it down to a 1/16 inch tapered ball nose. But so far, it looks pretty good. Now, this is where our, our troubled spots would be if, is these high spots here. Now, as far as my other clock, a lot of these components are low. They're not, they're not up at 1.5 inches thick and stuff. But right here on this curve, right here, let that finish cutting out and and right here, and I'll zoom in as soon as I can't move it while it's modeling. It won't let me. So far, we're doing good as far as this goes. As far as the model simulation, I'm not seeing too many flat spots. I'm going to have to look at the model. I'm going to go into the model and look at this here and see if I have a flat spot there. All right. So with that cut, let me close this for a minute and go back to my model. And yeah, no, that's intentional. That's supposed to be there. So I'm not seeing a whole lot of flat spots, but that's in the simulation. That's not on my actual CNC. So we got to be mindful of that when things are all said and done. All right, let's go back over to here and let's create our, let's go open up our other layer here. And I need to create my profile or pocket cut, if you will. I'm going to do a profile cut and cut this part out because it's going to be gone. That's where the insert is. And anytime you're following a single line, you're going to do a profile cut. And I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill, and I'm going to be on the inside. And I'm not doing a 1/16 of an inch per pass. Hold on a second. Let me fix that. I'm doing 1/8 of an inch per pass. I'm not too aggressive with my bits. I want to be on the inside of the line. I am going to add 2 tabs to this. The tabs are going to be small, but just to keep this piece from moving, because when my bit's down in there and this part starts, getting cut out, when this part starts moving, it's going to create a pinch point. And that's either going to snap my bit or it's going to, ruin my piece, or something. So I do not want this centerpiece because it is 1.5 inches thick. It's not going to fly out. It's not flying out, so it's got to move somewhere. And so I am going to add a tab. I'm going to just throw one down here at the bottom and one here at the top. And just a 1/4 inch tab, just something very simple to hold it into place down there so it doesn't move while it's making that final cut. And I'm going to go ahead, and this is going to be my profile cut to cut out that centerpiece. Oh, it won't let me delete it because I got tabs. But that's going to be my centerpiece. It's going to be cut out for the clock insert is going to go in there. That piece will not be there. And then my V-carve toolpath. No flat depth. I'm going to use a 60-degree V-bit for this. That'll be fine. We'll calculate that. The following tool produced an empty toolpath may not fit within the vector. What do I have here? I got a flat. Hold on a second. Let me close that. I had a flat depth tool in there. No flat depth, but I had a tool in there. So that's what I was getting a warning on. So let's calculate that and, create that clock there. Now I've got to do a profile cut, and I got to cut all this out. Now, here's the kicker. This is a pretty deep piece, and my 1/4 inch end mill is not going to be able to get all the way up in there and stuff in some of these tight areas and everything, when I profile cut these out, because this is going to be all hollow and all in there. I'm actually going to use a tapered ball nose bit for this to cut the part out. I'm actually going to use a ball nose bit to do the final profile cut, and that's going to allow me to get up as close as I can to some of these vectors and everything. And so, and I also have to be aware that it is going to be tapered versus a straight bit, unless I can find a long enough extended straight bit that's small enough to fit in there. But we'll see how badly the taper affects it. The look. I could use, unfortunately my 1/8 inch end mill only cuts 1 3/32 inch length. This is the maximum it cuts. So I'm going to use a tapered ball nose. And in this case, I'm going to use I'll use the same 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. And I'm going to be on the outside of the cut. Now, I'm going to turn off those vectors and turn my profile layer vector back on, or my, toolpath vector on, make sure that's the only layer that's got vectors on it. Yep. Okay. On that profile cut layer, I'm going to go to my layers tab, and instead of trying to, select all these because they're no longer grouped together and all that stuff, I'm going to, and that layer, that vector needs to get moved back to there. On these guys here, oh, they are grouped together. Never mind. I'm just going to select them. I was about to say, if not, then I'm going to go down to this layer and click on the menu here and tell it to select all the layer vectors, and it'll select all the vectors on that layer. So this works out. Now, on this part, I am going to throw some tabs on the outside of it. I'm not going to do it for preview purposes, but I would put tabs in there. And some of the bigger pieces and things, I'm not, I'll add tabs, but these smaller parts, I'm not too worried about them. If I was really concerned or worried about them, then I would do a pocket cut and just pocket out and mill all the material away, basically, instead of doing a profile cut. I just do an 1.5 inch deep pocket cut. But I'm not going to add tabs to this just for preview purposes only. I want to see what this comes out like. And we're going to preview the selected toolpath. And then I do want to add a little chamfer. We'll show you that here in a moment, but let this cut out, and we would do the chamfer first. But sorry, Camaro, do you have Vectric VCarve Desktop or Pro right now? Because we don't do updates. You have to do that through your Vectric VNCO account to update from VCarve Desktop or Pro to Aspire. You do that through Vectric. OEMs, us, or anybody else, we no longer do updates. Vectric has taken that in-house, and all upgrades, if you will, not updates, upgrades. You will handle that through your VNCO account, your Vectric and Company account on Vectric.com. We cannot do the upgrade for you. Okay, so now notice that I'm using a ball nose bit. So because it's rounded, it's got an 1/8 inch, it's got a 16th inch radius on here. That radius did not cut all the way through my material. So I do actually have to give my depth of cut a little bit more than the 1.5 inches, which means I am going to spoil my spoiler board a little bit for this one. But I'm going to go ahead and give it an additional 1/16 of an inch. So that's going to be 5.625. Let's just go 1.57. We'll just round it up and calculate that again to cut through. And that means I'm going to spoil my spoil board a little bit, but I have to because I'm using a ball nose bit. So there's no way around it, unfortunately. All right, so let's get rid of that, and let's go ahead and get rid of the tab just for a minute on the inside profile. Let's calculate that again, and let's get rid of those tabs so I can delete that. So we can kind of see a final piece, if this was sitting up on a mantle or something. Hell, I might even put it on a wall looking like that. You never know. But, that would be our clock. That would be a nice little sofa table, that behind the sofa table clock or mantle clock or something. You never know. Who knows? All right. So over here, we do have a little bit of a lip here, and I can give this a nice little bevel. I can give this a nice little bevel on the front edge. I won't be able to do the back edge unless I did it as a two-sided project, but I would be able to give the front a nice little beveled edge. I can't do a round over because I don't have enough. My round over bit's got to go down low, but I can use a V-bit. And so if I look here, the top surface of the base plate is 1.5, right? And if I come down here, which is the highest point, and I'm at 1.305, so let's call it 1.3. 1.31, we'll call it 1.31. So I've only got about that much, you know, 1.5, 1.3, so 0.2 inches that I can do a bevel cut on. So I'm going to go ahead and basically I'm going to take my, let's go to this one. Let's turn this off and turn this on. And let's turn this one on. And all I'm going to do basically is, here, let's do this. Turn that off. I'm going to copy this to a new layer. I'm going to turn off my other vectors except for the copy. I'm going to ungroup that layer. I'm going to go into node editing. And I'm going to cut the vector here on the corner. I'm going to cut the vector, zoom in nice and tight. I want to be on this lower line here. I'm going to cut the vector here on the corner. I'm going to hit the delete key on everything else because those are, oh, not that one. Sorry, I started selected. You know, this is the copy, the layer copy and all. So let's get out of node editing. Let's select all those vectors. Not the model. Do not select your model. I don't need all these vectors here. Oops. Okay. On this guy right here, I'm going to join him together with a straight line, and I'm going to go into node editing mode, and I'm going to cut or delete this span down here at the bottom. Delete the span. Okay. All right. So that gives me just this vector right here. So with this vector, I'm going to get out of here and go into a profile toolpath. I'm going to cut down 0.2. We'll take it at 0.2, see what happens. And I'm going to use a 60-degree V-bit. Let me see here. Hold on a second. Let's hit close for a minute. Let me look at this 3D view for a second. So nothing's wide right there from coming down and cutting. Nothing's going to hit it. So I'm actually going to use a wide angle V-bit. Let's go with a 90-degree V-bit. Where's my V-bits at? Half-inch 90-degree V-bit. And I want to be on the outside of the line, but I want to step over because the center of the bit is, I want to step over a negative amount. I want to come back negative. Negative, I'm going to go 0.1 inches. Bear with me. Profile toolpath. Negative 0.1. I want to be on the outside of the line. Negative meaning I want to go over the line with that. I'm going to use a 90-degree V-bit. I don't know what in the world button I hit, but it went away. So I got to get back there. My 90-degree V-bit. And I'm going to hit calculate. select the vector first and hit calculate. Now, I'm going to look at my 2D view here, and I'm going to turn on solid mode and make sure that my bit is cutting on the correct side. Now, I may want more of a chamfer because you can see it's only taking that little bit off there. So I might want to do a little bit more of a step over instead of the 0.1. I might want to go a quarter of an inch or so. But let's just take a look and see what we've done. And we definitely don't want to do that. That needs to be a quarter of an inch deep, not or 0.2 inches, not a 1.5. Let's recalculate that bad boy. There we go. That's looking better. Let's go ahead and preview that toolpath, and so we can see the little chamfer there. Let's step over more than 0.1. Let's step over 0.2. 0.25 will bring me right at the center of my 1/2 inch diameter bit. Let me see where that brings me. Calculate. Preview the selected toolpath. All right. So you see what that does, the 0.25. It brings me over too far, at a 0.1 inch deep, and it creates this lip right up here. Let's zoom into that. It creates that ridge, with that step over. So let's back that off a bit. I didn't want to go half the bit. We're going to go 0.2. 0.19. I'm going to choose 0.19. That's going to be my final answer. And I'm going to go ahead and preview that. I don't think it'll show me anything because that cut's already been done. Yeah, so we're going to reset the preview. And I'm going to preview all the tool paths. So we're going to run through it real quick. We're going to see our rough cut. And time is flying away. So this will be the end of the class tonight, guys. No, Camaro says, could you not just go on the line with the V-bit? No, Camaro. The reason why is you saw just right there how it created that groove. I didn't want at that 0.2 cut depth and everything. I don't want to go all the way to the center of my bit because it creates that V, and that created that little groove around there. So I want to be just on the outside line, but just recessed in a little bit. In this case, I'm going to do a 0.19, and hopefully that'll give me a chamfer cut and not a V groove cut. So Fred asked a question, says, so Laney, was that hole set up to the size of the clock? I might have missed that part if you stated above. Yes, it was. So that center hole was set up based on the clock. And while that preview is going on, let's bring the ClockKit page back over and everything. And on that clock insert, and let's take a look at the back of it here. Let's zoom in here. That clock insert, this inner diameter that's going to be fitting into that hole, that inner diameter there is 1 inch and 3/4, or 3.25 inches. Sorry, 3.25 inches. The overall diameter of the bezel and everything is 4 1/16. So that inner hole that I cut is for the 3.25 because it's a friction fit. These fins, hold that clock insert in, so you can slide it in and out and stuff and everything. But from the back of that bezel to the, furthest part back of the clock here, that's a total depth of 1 31/64, 1.5 inches basically. And so that's what determined the material. That's what determined the size of the material. And the project as a whole, the project size as a whole was determined based off that clock insert. I drew the 2 circles first, and I'm building off of that to whatever I come up with. Now, of course, we could have done something more simple. Hell, I could have made it a kind of a square wall clock with a clock on one side and a deer scene or something nice on the, or whatever on the right-hand side. I decided to go a little bit ornate because I wanted to show you how to take models that you have to make different kinds of models, how to blend models together, how to clip them, how to mirror them. And hopefully I achieved that with as many things as we did. Hopefully I achieved it, and you saw how the clipping effect works and how the mirroring effect works and all. So it's coming to its end. We're doing the final profile cut here. So this is the final profile cut, cutting the part out. Now you're only seeing part of the part because I have it zoomed in on that corner, on this corner right here. I have it zoomed in so we can see what that chamfer is going to look like. And you see the tool marks here and all. Because I use the vector as the boundary when creating the tool path for the 3D rough and 3D finish, this little area right here didn't get carved, but it's just a little bit a nice little cleanup. You could use a little chisel or something to clean that up. But here you go. So at a 0.19, we got a nice chamfer there. And let's take a look at this as a whole and everything. And even my 1/8 inch bit could not get into my 1/8 inch tapered ball nose bit, could not get into here to carve that material away. You can see all the tool marks in here. So it may end up requiring me to use a 1/16 inch tapered ball nose for my final profile cut. Let's see here if the 16th inch, and this is we'll validate this. Even a 32nd, it might even require me to use my 32nd inch bit to get into some of these tighter areas. And yeah, you can see the tool path was not created here. So it just can't get into these areas, like if I want them cut out. But I do, in my arsenal of tools, I do have a 32nd inch end mill, which has a 64th inch tip, and I can use that as a profile cut because a tapered ball nose is just like an end mill. It will, it removes material just like an end mill. So if I go into my arsenal of tools and I come down to my my tapered ball nose, my 32nd inch tapered ball nose, I'm going to edit the passes. I do not need to be making that small of passes. I'm going to, my pass depth, pass 1 depth. Let's see here. I'll take probably an 1/8 inch or 16th inch per pass. We'll click apply on that, and I'll maintain the exact start depth. So clear all passes. 0.125. Apply. And set last pass thickness. Okay, 1/16 of an inch per pass. It'll take about 25 passes, but that's fine. It's all for the gram, all for the detail. So let's let's calculate that, and Still not getting into those areas, even with that 32nd in or 64th inch bit. So let's preview that cut. And still not getting in there. There's still some areas that are kind of tight. I could go in and adjust those, or I could just call it a day and be happy with it. I could go in there with a small saw or something, or chisel, and I could kind of clean that up and hollow that out if I want it hollow. But all in all, we could go there. Now, one of the big key things when you're using a tapered ball nose bit, I want you to notice the lip that it leaves here around the edges, unlike a straight bit. So in order to clean that ball nose bit up, we're going to have to step over a little bit. And this will be the last. It'll be an offset, and we're going to go negative, and I'm going to step over probably about 32nd. Let's go 0.02. We'll start with 0.02. Negative 0.02. Calculate that out. And preview that selected toolpath. And let's see if it cleans up that lip any. So it did. So I was actually kind of right on the 32nd. We'll finish that up. We'll do it one more time. 0.03125. Calculate that out. Preview that selected toolpath, and that should get me right up on the edge of my model. Still a little bit of a lip there. One more time. Let's go 0.04. We'll just round it right up. And last but not least, let's try that again. Let's see if I want a nice smooth transition here. I don't want to overcut it, but there we go. That'll be fine. Okay. So there is either a wall clock without a base or a mantle clock. Hopefully you guys got some information on working with clipping toolpaths, or clipping levels, should I say, and mirror levels in your component mode. And this is Desktop, Pro, and Aspire. All three of you guys can do this. Check out Clock Kits for some clock inserts and all. And I haven't made a clock in a long, long time. Since I've done Spindle TV, I don't think we ever made a clock on Spindle TV, the channel. So I just want to do a decorative clock. I'm kind of, the top part's kind of growing on me a bit. So as a wall clock, I think or a mantle clock or something, I think I'm happy with that. I think that would look kind of decorative. Nice piece of walnut or something for me, and or something to match my furniture, oak or something, but we'll go from there. All right, now Rochelle asked the main question. She asked the main final question of the night, and this is the closing question. How long would it take to carve this project? And I'm going to tell you right now, it's a long, long, long time. About 13 hours. And where the largest part of it is your 3D finish cut. That's 9-hour run. And that darn profile cut, because we got to use a small end mill to get down inside of that, unless I can find a 16th inch extended bit, that's a 16th inch with a give me an 1.5 inch cut depth or something. But that 2 hours and 15 minutes to do that profile cut, to cut that part out with that 32nd inch ball nose bit. My rough cut's going to take about 1 hour 56 minutes. The finished cut is 9 hours and 11 minutes. Profile cut for cutting the insert for the clock out, about 2 minutes. The V-carve of the text, about 5 minutes. The chamfer, about 50 seconds. And then the final profile cut, which, by the way, your chamfer cut would be before the final profile cut. Final profile cut being about 2 hours and 15 minutes based on that bit. Having to use that bit and everything. Now, I could be probably a little bit more aggressive with my bit, but I don't want to break my 32nd inch tip bit just because I have to do a profile cut with it. And the only reason I have to do a profile cut with it is because a 1/4 inch end mill is not going to get in there. I need a long bit to get down into the cut, and I got some tight spots. So my 1/4 inch bit's not going to do it for me, so I had to go with a ball nose. And all in all, you're looking at about a 13-hour job if one were to cut this exactly as it sits right now. You're looking at a 13-hour job or so. Okay. Long time. All right. So Fred Grover, last one. Would it be possible to just use, say, a 3 3/4 inch thick boards and glue them up after cutting them out or not? Would it be possible to, say, use 3 3/4 inch boards, cut them out, and then glue them all together? Yeah. So Fred, what you're talking about there is basically slicing this model into 3 3/4 inch sections to cut it out. And you can actually do that right in the modeling toolpath. You can come in here and model thickness, material thickness, slice thickness. We could go 3/4 inch thick. In that case, with my 1.5 inch, it'd be 2 slices thick because I am set up for 1.5 inches, not 1 3/4 inches. You can slice that model and it will create the different tool paths based on the model slices and everything. And so if we look at the model slices after it creates them, if we look at the model slices, if we turn off the other model, turn off the other model, turn off. If we take and create a new level, insert a new level, because we don't want any mirroring or any trimming or anything on that level. If I insert a new level and call this class level 6, the last level of the night. If I put slice 1, 2 up into that level, let me turn off all the other levels. Okay, basically, slice 1. Let's come over here and look at the model. Oh, stand by. Close the preview. There we go. So basically, this is slice 1. This would be 1 3/4 inch piece of wood here. Don't do that. Control Z. All right, that would be, slice 1, and basically that would be just profile cut, right, and everything. And then slice 2, your upper slice, if you will. That would be this 3/4 inch board here. And then you would glue the back on to that to make your 1.5 inch thick. Now, if that was the case of doing that, then I wouldn't need, to, go with such a small bit, but I do still need to be able to get in here with it and everything, but it would be, less time to cut possibly. I don't know, about the same amount, but anyway, yes, you could slice that into 2 pieces or even possibly 3 pieces, 3 3/4 inch pieces, depending on what size your board was. Okay. So you'd have slice 2 and slice 1. You could slice it up. Yep. And so it's profile tool pass to cut it out. All right. Okay. Okie dokie. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I do have to run. I'm running about 45 minutes late on another appointment. Hopefully this helped you out, or hopefully this gave you some information and you pick something up from it. Take your models that you have. Just because those models are there, it doesn't mean that they have to look like that. Change them up, mix and match them, clip them, mirror them, do all kinds of cool things and make some completely unique components that you don't have unless you went out and bought it on eBay or designandmake.com or something like that. Make your own. Use that toolpath. Now, like I said, 9.5 came out with the mirroring feature in the level mirroring. So you can mirror and all that stuff still, and that works great. You don't necessarily need to clip it. You can mirror. And version 10 came out with the clipping function and all that. So, all right. Have a great night, guys and girls. Thank you for sticking with me so long. I wanted to end this at 9:30, but we ran over about 45 minutes. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Last thing I'll say, Fred, your chamfer cut, if you did slice it into or broke it up into 2 different boards like that slicing, your chamfer cut and your hole cut out and all that would be on the top slice 1. And slice number 2 would be just profile cuts, cutting out all the little holes and all that stuff. And then you'd have to glue them up, make sure they line up just right, and you'd be good. All right, everybody. Until next time, have a great night.